So anything that then came out saying this is cholesterol free got a green card. Oh yeah, this is great stuff. And that's how vegetable oils got onto this thing, onto the scene, that hey, butter is no good. Saturated fats are actually no good. Now these polyunsaturated fats, so there's two types of fats, right? There's saturated fats, actually there's three. There's saturated fats, which are found naturally in meats and chicken and in some plants. And then you have your polyunsaturated fats, and then you have your trans fats. Now, polyunsaturated fats are what's found in vegetable seed oils, and they were touted as being heart healthy. But as time went on, more and more studies showed that actually that is not true, because that's omega 6 and omega 9. Those two components of your vegetable seed oils are actually very pro-inflammatory. So they cause inflammation in the body. And that makes sense because they're polyunsaturated. So there's double bonds that can interact with things. So when you have a saturated fat, there's no bonds to interact. Unsaturated fats have bonds that can interact. So they can be oxidized as well, and they can attach themselves to other molecules in the body and the plasma lemma, the lining around each cell. So the polyunsaturated fats are actually pro-inflammatory. And that's exactly what happened in India, that we moved away from consuming saturated fats in the form of ghee, which is clarified butter, and we all moved over to vegetable seed oils. And with it, we saw an epidemic of coronary artery disease in younger and younger people. So we need
for a society that traditionally didn't really have a lot of that in their lineage and background.
No, absolutely true. I was flabbergasted because you're right. Our great grandparents did not have coronary artery disease, and people say that they didn't know they didn't have it. No. Autopsies were done, diagnostic studies were done. They did not have coronary artery disease to the extent that we have today, and every time a young South Asian walks into my office, I go, oh my God, there it is again. I mean, it's terrible. 38, 35, they're already coming in with heart disease. And when I look at them, I find two things wrong with them, Drew. Number one, they're consuming a lot of vegetable seed oils. I measure the linoleic acid levels in the blood, and it's sky high. So before, the upper limit used to be 20. Then we found that the population has a higher level, so we moved it up to 30 and said now 30 is normal. How crazy is that? So linoleic acid is a reflection of your omega-6 intake. And omega-6s come from all the processed foods and the vegetable seed oils. Now, why do they use vegetable seed oils? Because it's nice and dry. It has a long shelf life. You can put it in the package. It'll be like that for the next year. You don't have to worry about it. It's cheap. Yes, absolutely. So everyone started using vegetable seed oils. So the linoleic acid levels are really, really high. And then these fats are pro-inflammatory, and that causes further inflammation in our body. And I found that the LDL particles, they become small and dense versus large fluffy particles. So many times patients will come to my office and they do the advanced lipid panel, which is a blood test that we do on some patients. And I'll find that they have a pattern B. That means they have small, dense LDL particles. And they're doing everything right. And I said, now what's the final thing I can do for you? And I tell them, you know what? Cut out all the vegetable seed oils and start consuming some saturated fats. And they look at me with their wide eyes saying, would you tell me to eat saturated fats? And I said, yes, just start putting some butter instead of other things, other vegetable oils. And they'll come back and they'll find that the panel improved 6 months later. They now have a pattern A, large, fluffy LDL particles, less inflammation. The blood markers that I do also are improved. So generally speaking, vegetable seed oils should be discouraged. And in India, particularly, they advertise that as an alternative, a better form. They call it vegetable ghee, which is very misleading. And so I tell all my friends, families, patients, stay away from vegetable seed oils and go back to consuming ghee when you are cooking. And it's much, much healthier for you. You get more absorption of all the vitamins A, D, E, K. It has a higher burning point when you're cooking with it. It's not going to produce trans fats the way the vegetable seed oils produce trans. Look, you know how we take our foods and it's left over and we put it in the fridge and the next day we take it out again and we reheat it again or we put it in the microwave. You're just generating trans fats if you've cooked with vegetable seed oils. So you've produced your trans fats as well. This is a very, very bad habit. And traditionally, we never did that back home in India. Our ancestors never. We would cook each meal separately. We never reheat the meals. And reheating food that has been cooked with vegetable seed oils is extremely deleterious. And the moment my patients stop doing all that, I see the results. I see the blood test. They also do better. They have less event rates, but I see it in the blood reports. I see benefits. Vegetable seed oils, absolutely no. So a lot of them worry about things like olive oil. Should I consume olive oil? And it's supposed to be very healthy. Now, olive oil is healthier, but you got to remember that it's not all monounsaturated. See, many people just categorize oils as one or the other.
It's
Well,
always a blend.
it's a blend. You're absolutely right, Drew. You see, olive oil is about, depends on where you get it and how it gets into your bottle and all that, but it's about 50% monounsaturated. And that still leaves another 20 to 30%, depends on where it's made and how it's comes into your bottle, of polyunsaturated. And then it has a little bit of saturated fats. So olive oil, generally speaking, is better, should not be heated, should be added to your salads because it causes when you heat olive oil, you get rid of the polyphenols and it's got a lower burning point. So I don't heat olive oil. So I tell my patients to stay away from that, from heating olive oil as well. But you're so right about the vanaspati ghee and vegetable seed oils. And I think that and the second problem I found in all my young patients from South Asia is hyperinsulinemia, even though they're not overweight. So the term I apply to them, and of course, 20% of non-obese patients can also have this. I call them TOFIs. It's a term that's been used by a lot of people. Thin on the outside, fat on the inside. So when I look at my South Asian patients, they are thin, but they got a stomach. And that's because of insulin resistance, too much carbs. And what really got me was when I found out that if you look at Hindus in India, 80% of them are vegetarian. And yet they have the highest incidence of coronary artery disease. And nobody questioned that. Why would we have such a high incidence of coronary artery disease in a vegetarian population? It's because they're consuming vegetable seed oils, and it's because they're consuming far too much sugar, and it's all processed. That's the other thing, processed powderized. The food is powderized. And that's another form of it's not an ingredient, but it's a form of the food that causes this huge rise in your insulin level when you consume it. So those are studies that have been done in rats and in human beings. That if you powderize something unnatural, since when does nature let you consume a powderized substance and then expect your insulin response to be normal? It just doesn't happen. But we did it. And in India, we grind up everything. And ever since the invention of the steel mill, I think it was around here 1830, 1840, I don't know. Ever since then, if you look at the curve, the incidence of all these degenerative diseases went up. The milling process is a malignant process. And I think that, your great-grandmother, my great-grandmother, had a stone and she ground the grains if she's going to consume grains. It was non-processed. It was very granular. And I think that's
which
really important.
which it meant that it had more fiber content than just the stripped out refined flours that we have today of all different types, which are also becoming very pervasive in the health world. We're using a lot of tapioca, cassava, we're using a lot of those flours, and they're great tasting products and they're nice to have as like occasionally a little bit here and there, and it's beautiful. But anytime we strip out those flours, which a lot of our ancestors, just because we didn't have access to the technology, anytime we strip out the fiber, because we didn't have the technology, we now are left with essentially a sugar. It's straight up sugar, but the population doesn't see it as sugar, but it has just as much impact on your blood sugar and your insulin as having straight sugar in the body would.
Absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the grain, it's got the outer husk, which is the fiber. Then it's got the endosperm and then the germ. So everything's stripped out except for all the starch. And then you expect that to be a healthy food. And then, of course, because you got rid of all the antioxidants and other ingredients, you add them back to the flour. And of course, the fiber, not only the fiber, I'm going to tell you a little bit about fiber. I mean, as I peeled this onion, I found so many layers. So the fiber. So they say, oh yeah, fiber is good for the heart, it's good for the heart healthy. And I said, how? How is fiber healthy? Well, fiber does only one thing. It doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
It's your bacteria. You already got the answer. See, the thing is that there's wisdom in the way nature packages things together. So the fiber does a number of things to you. And from the time that you consume it first time, the K cells, which are in the duodenum, which detect the food that's coming in, and it's going to tell the pancreas how much insulin to make. So they, for some reason, when you consume food with those soluble and insoluble fiber, they form like a layer. And it's like a lattice, and the made of the insoluble fiber, and the in between the lattice is the soluble fiber. And the insulin response you're going to get is a much attenuated response, much smaller response if the food is containing fiber. If it's without the fiber, the K cells will just say, whoa, I've got all these carbs coming in, and let's make a gallon of insulin. See, that's a problem. The second part of this problem is that the fiber, which is missing, your bacteria in your gut are never going to see that fiber. So now your garden of bacteria in your gut, the 10 trillion that you have in there, are starving. And you're going to grow the wrong bacteria in your gut. And because you don't have the right bacteria in your gut, you're going to get inflammation. Definitely you're going to get inflammation because the bacteria in your gut are now turning out to be a huge factor in health, which we totally ignored until recently. And now we're discovering that, oh my God, these guys are our friends. The 10 trillion bacteria are our friends. And now we're changing our mind about that. And that's why the fiber has to go back. And it's not just fiber in the form of Metamucil. No. In its natural state. You got to have these fibers. So that's how it reduces blood pressure. So, oh yeah, fiber increases and lowers heart attack rates. It's through inflammation, but it's not because you're doing it. It's because your bacteria are doing something. And the metabolites from the bacteria have huge health benefits to us. And now we're realizing that diet and fasting changes your bacterial flora. And if you then go back to your good, healthy bacterial flora, your immunology is going to get better, your leaky gut, your substances that are actually crossing over and causing inflammation in your body and causing connective tissue disease and other diseases, all that gets better. So that's a whole new chapter. It's amazing, what we're learning now, and it comes down to what our granny already knew.
Hey YouTube, if you enjoyed what you just saw, keep watching for more great content on how to improve your brain and your life.
We have to avoid these oils, and it is incredible. They are in everything. I mean, when you walk into even Whole Foods, go pick up a packaged food item and try to find a food